Can you please state your first name, age, and the city you reside in?
Yes, my name is Cierra. I am 27 and I live in Santan Valley.
Can you tell us how many children you have, their ages, and if you are currently pregnant?
Definitely not currently pregnant. At least I don't think I am. I have two boys and a girl, a newly 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and 3-year-old. Okay. Yes.
What is rewarding about being a mother, and what challenges do you face as a mother?
Challenges, I think, because I had my first so young, I think a challenge has just been like trying to learn how to not just like do me, but also be a mom at the same time, and being able to go about that like certain ways. It was easier with one. With 3 kids, it's hard just because they're all different. They all have different personalities. They all have different needs, and I'm responsible for catering to that 24/7. So that's a challenge, but it's rewarding at the same time because they all have different personalities. They're all different little people. They love me in different ways. My 8-year-old, he might not, want to be around me all the time, but like he shows me love in different ways than my 3-year-old does, and my 5-year-old shows me love in different ways than both of them do. And I think I love like just seeing them each grow, their progression from being tiny little babies to now being independent young kids. So I love seeing that. I love seeing the story part of it. Yeah, that's been rewarding for me.
How was your pregnancy experience or experiences? And for example, were they planned? What was your overall outlook about your pregnancies or being pregnant? And did you have any complications? What type of support did you have, etc.?
So my first baby, my first pregnancy, I was 18 and pregnant, so scary. My pregnancy, I was sick a lot, basically the whole time. And I had him, I think he was about 3 weeks early. That labor it's scary, it's overwhelming because I was so young. And luckily I did have my mom and my aunt and my husband in there at the time, but it's just an overwhelming experience. With my second, I don't remember much because I was on the epidural the whole time. But my third pregnancy, my labor and delivery was overwhelmingly traumatic. I had her at 3 days shy of 41 weeks. I went in, I was only in labor for 6 hours. My water broke at home, went straight to the hospital, and I noticed right away that my contractions were coming way too fast. And way too strong, and I just felt like at that moment, I don't know if it's because maybe she was busy, but the specific nurse that I have kind of brushed it off like it was, not important. And so what ended up happening is I told my husband, the contractions were too bad, and at this point I need to get an epidural, which was not in my plan. I was supposed to go natural, but I couldn't catch my breath. So I was like, all right, let's just do it. He told the nurse, and she totally didn't even take the time to check me, to check how far along everything was going, didn't check me at all. So immediately she ordered the anesthesiologist to come in, give me my epidural. When they gave me my epidural, they put it in the wrong part of my spine. So I ended up, which I know what an epidural feels like. So I told my husband, it's not wearing, I can feel everything, it's bad, she's coming. And the nurse was like, no, you're just being dramatic. Yeah, kind of just you're not listening. And I'm telling her, this is my 3rd child. I'm very aware of what's going on right now. Didn't listen to me. So I'm telling her, I'm in so much dire pain. She's coming, I can literally feel her. And she was like, there's no way that's happening right now. And I was like, if you would check me, you would know. Finally, she checks me, and she looks like a dummy because at this point she's checking me, and she's like, oh my God, you're 10 centimeters. And I'm like, I'm telling you, like, I'm screaming, crying, I know what's going on. And she tells me, you need to wait until the doctor comes in to push the baby out. And I'm like, I can't do that. And she's like, well, you have no choice. So at this point, I'm telling my husband, like, you need to talk to somebody because there's going to be a problem. Finally, they got a doctor in there shortly after, and I had her, and thank God everything was fine. I wasn't able to touch her for about an hour. They had to put her in an incubator just because her body was still cold or something. And she did have, I believe she did have the cord around her neck, because I have a video of it, and she had the cord around her neck. So yeah, it was a traumatic experience. It was like, I felt like I was just not heard. And I will never forget it. Like that, as much as I would like to have another baby, that experience alone terrifies me, because if it happens again, I don't even know what I would do. And it was just me and my husband, so it's not like my mom was there to speak up or anything. It was just kind of like, too bad. So yeah, that was really traumatic and annoying for me, because it's like nobody's listening. So thank God she's healthy and happy and sassy now, but at that point in time, it was just like not my favorite. So yeah, that was bad.
And that was here in Arizona?
Yes, that was, yeah. Yeah.
Where did you or do you get advice or information on pregnancy, childbirth, and or parenting? Do you think this type of information was or is useful or relevant to you? I personally have not received a lot of information on it. I just kind of had my mom like, this is what happens, this is how you go about it. I came from a single mom, so I kind of just watched how she was with me and how she goes about things. I try to do the same with my kids. But I feel like if that information was out there more, that it would be a lot more useful. Just for like breastfeeding, parenting, everything that comes with being a parent in general. If there was more information, I feel like a lot more women wouldn't be as scared, because that's the first thing I hear when I'm like, well, do you plan on having kids? I don't know. I'm scared. I don't know anything about having a baby. And I'm like, me neither. You kind of just have to wing it. So I feel like if there was more support in general, but also a lot more information, it would be a lot more useful for anybody who plans on having a kid or is having a kid in general. So when you say support, what does that look like for you, or what would you?
For me personally, I think I struggled a lot with, at the time when I first got pregnant when I was 18, I struggled a lot with like finding myself as a person. And I feel like maybe it's because I was young that I didn't get as much as support as I, should have or could have been given. Like I said, just maybe with more information. Like when I had my son, when I had him in the hospital, it was kind of like a condescending, like the way they would talk to me was kind of condescending, like, well, I need to double check to make sure that I'm like, at this point, I know what I'm doing. I'm not like 12, but if you could give me a little bit more information instead of just being like, here, out into the world you go with this baby, figure it out. Like just breastfeeding, I remember asking questions and her kind of just being like, you'll get the hang of it. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure I will, but help me out, because it's already a process. So like I said, just more information being given up front during the pregnancy before you even think about having children. Because I never thought about that. I never talked about that with anybody. It was just like, don't have a baby. You're young, don't have a baby. When I'm like, what's gonna happen? Like, what are the steps? Like all of the stuff. So before, during, and even after, because postpartum care, I feel like all of those would have been lifesavers. And even with my third baby, all of that information would definitely be necessary.
What type of things do you do to make sure that you're healthy? So healthy for yourself and for your children, your family. What sort of things make it difficult for you to achieve good health?
Honestly, that's probably something that I do struggle with. 3 kids is a lot. So trying to kind of create a balance in my home it can be overwhelming because 3 kids, 3 no's, 3 maybes, 3 yeses. Really, honestly, something that we try to do as a family, which we've done a lot more since we moved, is just trying to be more outdoors, be more comfortable, like, taking walks and just spending time with each other. For me, that's the type of healthy that like I'm kind of focused on. And my kids are in sports and they're active and a little too active sometimes. But I think that's something that we do focus on, is trying to, just remain healthy as a family, go on walks, spend time together, try and be as active as we can. I do think maybe it could be hard for some people. For me, sometimes it's a little overwhelming trying to, get out there and try new things as a mom, especially like I've tried like the yoga classes and I've tried all of that, but I feel like a lot of the times I don't go, or I talk myself out of it because I'm nervous, because most of those classes there's people in there that don't look like me. And even if it's not even those classes, just being out in the world, like sometimes I just feel a little overwhelmed because the things that are available for other people are not always available for people who look like me. And I think that's something that I struggle with on a daily basis. So, yeah.
So what do you feel is available that's not available? Like what sort of specific?
Personally, I think a lot of like hands-on stuff, like the classes per se, like I think it would be great if there was more, and it might just be where I live or whatever the case, but I think it would be great if there was more classes for women of color specifically, like for parenting, for getting together, for postpartum group chats, whatever, anything like that. I think that would be amazing, because it's hard when like I'm talking to, somebody who does not relate with me and they have not a clue what I'm talking about. So maybe if that was more available to our community, I think that would be amazing for women to like join in and be a part of.
What type of support, resources, or events would you like to see in your area?
I would like a lot more parenting classes. I think that would be good. Learning a lot more about home births and natural births. More things for my kids to do, because there's not really much where I live, but more stuff like that would be like nice for me to see, because I'd be able to actually participate in and not feel left out. So,
what are some of the things that are taboo about pregnancy, birth, and parenting? What are people, so doctors, media, community, and other parents not discussing that you feel like needs to be discussed?
Mistreatment of, like I said, for me and for a lot of my friends who do have kids, a lot of mistreatment of specifically Black and brown mothers while they're in the hospital. A lot of people, when I have talked about it, there's been people that have been like, no, you're just being dramatic. And I'm like, let me tell you something. If you've ever been in the hospital or you're in labor, it's always, to me, it seems like they kind of just, you voice your opinion and they don't listen. And like one of my friends, she actually had her baby back in August. And while she was in the hospital, we were on FaceTime with her because she's like one of my best friends. The whole time she's like, they're not listening to anything I'm saying. I'm telling them I'm in pain. They're walking off, acting as if it's not a problem. And, we all know we're in the middle of a pandemic. multiple people are having babies, but she was like, I know there's so many other women in here who are having children, but I'm literally telling them that I'm not comfortable or I feel sick and my needs are not being met at all. So I'm just kind of stuck in here until they shoo me out of the door. So I feel like that's something that is not talked about enough or not taken seriously enough. And if there would be a little bit more education on that, I feel like people would be able to be more comfortable with having like natural births or doulas and stuff like that, because I know I would have.
What about for like in parenting? So for birth and childbirth, but what about also like parenting? Do you feel like there's anything that the media or things that you read or social media, whatever, or other parents, do you feel like things that they're not talking about certain things as pertains to like parenting?
I mean,
or it's like shameful or like, oh, we don't talk about that?
Like, I mean, I guess it really just depends on the parent and how they choose to parent. For me, you know, when I was a kid, I got spankings. Now it's like, I feel like, you know, my kids don't get spankings, but they do get like grounded and punished and stuff like that. It does seem like, you know, if you punish your kid or anything like that, it's almost like a problem. Like, luckily, you know, my kids are pretty chill. They don't get in too much trouble. They drive me crazy, but they don't get in too much trouble. But, you know, when I was a kid, things were a lot different. Like, you know, I could get a spanking and that was it. These days, I feel like you're not really allowed to punish your kids. Also, not even just that, like how you parent your kids, people expect you to parent your kids a certain way. And, you know, there's some parents who I know that are super rough on their kids and they're super tough and rough, and that's not my parenting style. But the moment that I'm not super tough and rough on my kids, it's like, oh, well, you're not teaching them, you know, how to go about this the correct way. And I'm like, everybody finds their comfort. For me, that's my comfort. For you, if you want to spank your kid, that's on you. That's not what I'm choosing to do. If I want to ground my kid and take a toy away for a week, that's what I'm choosing to do, because I want to break the bit. Like, you know, when I was a kid, that's how stuff was done. That's not how it's going to be for me. So I feel like that needs to be talked about a lot more, because everybody's different. Everybody comes from different backgrounds. And, you know, not everything should be a certain way, because that's not realistic, you know. So I personally think that.
So would you say it sounds sort of like parenting, not alternatives, but alternatives, or like different approaches to handle?
Yeah, different ways to go about certain situations. Like, you know, my 5-year-old, he has ADHD, so he's bouncing off the walls all the time. And as easy as it would be for me to spank his butt and be like, stop, that's not realistic. You know, my dad is, you know, he's old school, you know, like he was raised a certain way, and he's like, well, if I did that when I was a kid, I would. And I'm like, that's fine, but for me, that's not what I'm choosing to do, you know. Like I said, it would be easy to just yell at him and be like, stop doing that, spank him, but that's not what he needs at the time. He clearly is looking for something else. So I just have to figure out how to handle things differently than some people or most people would.
So in the U.S., Black and Native American women have some of the worst maternal and infant health outcomes. For example, the number of women who die in childbirth, number of infant deaths, etc. Why do you think that is, and how does this make you feel?
Honestly, the only word that I could say that it would make me feel would be angry, scared, nervous. I honestly don't really know why, but at the same time, when you sit back and you think about how the world really is and the mistreatment outside of hospitals and maternal and care, all of that, I can only imagine how bad it is when you're in the hospital and you're about to give birth to your child. My husband and I have been talking about actually having a fourth child, and I bring that up to him all the time because, like I said, with my last daughter, it was so scary and overwhelming. I could not imagine going back to that same hospital, which where all my kids were born, going back to that same hospital and getting that same treatment. And like I said, some of my friends have received horrible treatment. So I think, I mean, it's disgusting that, you know, we get the least treatment, you know, to other people. Other people, they are treated like for me, like I said, I felt like I was not heard. I felt like I'm crying out for help, like I'm telling you I'm not comfortable. This is what's going down. My body is telling me this. I'm telling you this, and you're not doing anything about it. But you'll go to the next room and comfort them. So as much as I would love for that to be something that changed, if those people in the hospital and the medical workers are not willing to do that, I feel like it would be better to find a different alternative instead of going directly to the hospital. Like I told my husband, if we do have a fourth baby, I would like to do a home birth and get a doula and at least be able to try that before I'm sent back to a hospital and I'm stuck in a crappy situation that I don't want to be in. Because one thing I'm not going to do is allow somebody to, you know, mistreat me multiple times, especially when it comes to my child. Because at that point, I'm worried about not just myself, but my child. And if you're mistreating me and you're not doing as I ask, I can only imagine what you're doing to, you know, my child. So I know that it's like that, unfortunately. And as much as I wish that could be something that would change, I think, like I said, if we had more alternatives and we had more knowledge about an alternative way to comfortably give birth, I think that would be amazing. Sign me up for that.
So what factors do you think contribute to a healthy pregnancy, an ideal birth, and a successful transition into parenting?
Staying active, 100%. I think that's super important when you're pregnant. Nobody really tells you that until, you know, you're 6 months and they're like, you gained 50 pounds. Staying active, staying knowledgeable, staying up to date on like what's going on with you in your pregnancy. I think for me, it was more so like just trying to make sure that I was staying active enough so that after I had my baby, specifically my first child, after I had my son, I was able to kind of pick up. And it's already hard because, you know, your body changes and you're going through your hormones and everything. But after I had my son, I feel like that was when I kind of was able to kind of bounce back. I mean, I was young at the time, so it's not the same now, but I definitely was able to bounce back and I worked 2 jobs when I was pregnant, so I was always on the go. I was always I was never at home. So definitely staying healthy, eating healthier, you know, keeping your mind right while also making sure that you're doing exactly what you need for your child. Like, it's a lot. Nobody really tells you all that until you are pregnant, and then you're like, oh my gosh. So yeah, all of that is 100% going to help you when you do have your baby.
So as a mother, what type of questions do you ask yourself from time to time?
Am I enough? Am I doing enough? Am I showing them what's right and what's wrong? Am I, you know, you get in your moments where sometimes I get in my moments where maybe I'm being too mean, and then afterwards I'm like, should I have went about it that way? Maybe I should have just took a breath and, you know, started over. So I think as a mom, you're constantly doubting yourself, like all the time, and I think that's normal. You know, sometimes I get down on myself about, you know, anything. Maybe I woke him up too early, or I told him something and he took it the wrong way. You know, I tell my 8-year-old to go get in the shower and he's like, but why? And I'm like, just go do it. And you know, so I'm always constantly doubting myself, and then it's my kids that kind of give me like that pickup, like, Mom, chill out. You're doing good. we love you. We got everything we need. So, I mean, who doesn't? As a mom, I think that's a normal thing to do. Unfortunately, we do that. But I think as long as you really go about it how you feel necessary and how you feel comfortable being a parent, and if your kids are happy and healthy at the end of the day, that is really my only goal. As long as they're happy and they're healthy and, you know, they ain't got nothing going on with them, then that's like my, like, okay, Cierra, you doing a good job, girl.
And it sounds sort of like you said, your kids are like, oh, chill out, like,
yeah,
good. So
yeah.
It sounds sort of like your own kids are
yeah.
part of your support system.
Oh, 100%. I'm one of those moms where like I try and do the most of the most, because I had a single mom growing up, so my mom wasn't able to always, you know, do the big family stuff. And so, you know, me and my husband, we go overboard. Christmas, overboard. Halloween, overboard. And sometimes, like I said, I ask myself, like, am I doing too much, or is this not enough? And my kids 100% are a part of my support system, whether it comes to my photography and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to do this, or this is not going the way I planned for it to go. Specifically my oldest kid will be like, Mom, you're perfectly fine. Stop, you know. Or if I'm sad and I'm in my feelings, like, I'm sorry, I yelled at you today, I shouldn't have yelled at you. He was like, well, I wasn't listening. So I'm not mad at you. And I'm like, as long as you still love me at the end of the day, and as long as you feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing as a mom, there's nothing I can't complain about that. So 100%, they're my homies. They got my back.